We've known for quite a while that Venezuela is crumbling, and plenty of nations are eager to salvage the country for parts. We know that the CIA is interested in the dynamic in Venezuela, and they're using that knowledge to their advantage. Mike Pompeo, the current Secretary of State, said in 2017, while he was director of the CIA, that it's in America's interest for Venezuela to have a stable democracy, and that he was hopeful there would be a transition. We also can't forget that while it's perfectly normal for there to be no documents on current CIA involvement, there are some key characteristics of CIA-initiated regime changes in Latin America specifically. They always seem to run their covert ops under the banner of promoting democracy or human rights or something of the sort. Pompeo also said that the CIA is trying to inform the State Department about how to proceed in Venezuela, and the CIA is using the State Department to back Guaido. The CIA has also incited violence, just as they did in Ukraine, and if you want to know more about this man, Leopoldo Lopez, I'll link my video below that's called CIA's Regime Change in Venezuela. Lopez took part in the US-backed coup to remove Chavez in 2002, so it's no surprise that his name pops up again. He also has CIA links back to Kenyon College, but again, I'll link my video on this below because today I have some new developments to cover. But before I get into that, I've set up a website for our community at shieldstrm.com. I can only post every few days here on the channel, but to get new posts and comments from me every day, the site is where I'll be. We have over 170 members currently, and we're growing every time that I talk about the site. So once we reach 3,000 members over there, I'll be in a much better position to take this full time. And that's the goal. So check out the website if you haven't. Signing up is free and you'll get the notifications that you want without fail. So now, back to the new developments. Documents were recently obtained under the Freedom of Information Act that have exposed a secretive foreign office unit aimed at the reconstruction of Venezuela. Now, Western nations supporting Guaido's revolution against Maduro is nothing new, but in January of this year, Guaido was meeting with and receiving support from Boris Johnson and Mike Pompeo, among others. Now, in the UK, there's something called the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, abbreviated FCO, and documents show that Guaido not only visited with them during his time in London, but that there exists a special unit, as I was saying, to reconstruct Venezuela. Now, this is the same office that pressed the Bank of England to allow Guaido to access $1.2 billion in Venezuelan gold reserves back in January of 2019. The FCO is reconstructing Venezuela for humanitarian reasons, as if we haven't heard that one before. The problem is that Latin America has been so manipulated by other world powers that their culture isn't developing in a reliable or natural way. Every step forward is foreign because it's literally being manipulated by foreign governments. And I'm generally against aid for any country, but at this point it's hard to tell how much of Venezuela's woes are the result of manipulation or if it's predominantly still the culture's natural progression. But as far as this document goes, notice that the head of the Venezuela Reconstruction Unit is John Seville. He posted this statement from the FCO on Twitter, and again we see the recurring theme of all this reconstruction being done in the name of democracy and humanitarianism. Seville helped organize Guaido's visit to the UK, and at the time there were supposedly already plans for more violence from the US and Venezuelan opposition forces. This was shown in a document provided by the Silvercorp CEO, even though Venezuelan opposition forces dispute the legitimacy of Guaido's signature. And Silvercorp is a Florida-based private security firm. Now, keep in mind China's pushes on Venezuela and the fact that the US is trying to take as much control of the oil markets as they can. And think back to the recent video that I did talking about Thucydides' trap with the US and China. It doesn't mean that conflict is inevitable, but the main factor to consider is how disparate the goals are of the superpowers involved. The US and China have very different goals, most of which directly conflict. So considering the US's leverage over Silvercorp, it looks like the US is using Silvercorp as a means of control in the Venezuelan revolution. And China is also trying to control the Venezuelan opposition. But I don't want to forget about my claim that there were more plans for violence. So, for starters, Silvercorp is saying that all money will be backed, secured with Venezuelan oil, and it's based on the value of the dollar. So they're heavily interested in Venezuelan oil, just like the Chinese. And the fact that a document like this even exists between a private security firm and the Venezuelan opposition is proof that something is up. And I understand that the legitimacy of Guaido's signature is up for dispute, but you'll soon see why that doesn't really matter. So the contract in question is worth nearly $213 million, but here's the private mercenary intervention that we'd come to expect. In the early morning of May 3rd, there was an unusual amount of military activity off the coast of Macuto on Venezuela's coast. Shortly after, the Minister of the Interior said that mercenaries attempted a maritime invasion from Colombia. There were 10 men in total, 8 didn't make it, but 2 were captured. They were American military officials from Texas, and they work for Silvercorp. So when we look at the document released by Silvercorp's CEO, the legitimacy of the document is no longer under question when we see Silvercorp actually in Venezuela attempting to aid the opposition's overthrow of Maduro. You can't claim that the document is fake when the prophetic claims in the document come true. So now we see the US involved through Silvercorp, and we see the UK involved through the FOIA release showing the FCO created a special unit for Venezuelan reconstruction. The FOIA release also showed an email from Vanessa Newman, who's Guaido's UK representative, and some UK government officials. This shows there's contact and coordination between Guaido and the UK government. So we can see the US, the UK, and China all trying to take part in Venezuela's overthrow. Why? Well, it's like I said before. It's so that they can salvage Venezuela for parts and guarantee themselves a certain amount of power to guarantee that they salvage as much for themselves as they possibly can. So I just wanted to bring these documents to light and show that the Western involvement in the overthrow of Maduro is now shown to be true beyond a shadow of a doubt. Again, I'll link my other video on the CIA's involvement in Venezuela below, but this only further substantiates the claims that Guaido is not being put into power through natural means, but rather through force. And the direction of that force is to support other nations employing the force or paying for the force. Now, I've linked everything below as I always do, and I really appreciate everyone tuning in. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one.